right, I think we are almost in business. We did it. Okay, we are officially in our meeting. And yes, at Joaquin's request and Krista's request, I will go ahead and facilitate until we see Angelo arriving. So welcome everyone to the City of Salem's Human Rights Commission. So happy to see each of you. And we begin our meetings with a welcome and an introduction, and we do that in a way that we'll introduce ourselves and then we'll invite the next person to do that. So they call that popcorn style. So for example, my name is Gretchen Bennett. I'm on the staff team at the commission. My pronouns are she, her, and I will turn it to Krista.
Hi, I'm Krista Gallagher. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm from Ward 4, and I will pass it to David.
Hello, my name is David Reinhold. I'm a commissioner. I'm in resident of Polk County, and my pronouns are he and him. And I'll pass it to Lieutenant Aguilar.
Hi, good evening. My name is Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with Salem Police, and I am the liaison between the Salem Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And Joaquin, have you gone yet?
I have not, Lieutenant. My name is Joaquin. I am a commissioner on the commission, and I'm a resident of Ward 8, and I'm happy to see everyone, or most everybody here today. Kelsey, are you there?
Yes, hi. Sorry, I am on COVID just today. This is I'm gonna popcorn it to Laura.
It's hard to hear you. Sorry. This is the interpreter speaking.
Oh, no, I'll say it again. Is that better?
It's a little bit better.
Okay, hold on. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a member of Ward 4 and a member of the Human Rights Commission. Cynthia, was that better?
Yes, thank you.
Of course. And I'm gonna popcorn it to Laura.
Thank you. I'm Laura Fouts. This my pronouns are she, her. This is my first meeting, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you. I'm a member of the commission, newly inducted. And let's see, who hasn't gone? Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia Knight. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of Ward 4 and a commissioner. And this is my son. And okay, buddy. And I would like to choose Spencer.
Hi, my name is Spencer. I'm a member of Ward 7, and I'm a local high schooler. I have interest as a youth representative. Yeah.
Spencer, thank you. And that might be everyone. I'd like to invite my new colleague who's sitting with me to introduce himself. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jacob Thode. I'm an intern with the city manager's office, and I use he and him pronouns.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So let's see. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I am not aware that we've received is there anyone here tonight that would like to share some public comment that's not a member of the commission? All right. Again, we're sure glad to see the new faces. Spencer, thank you for considering being interested in the commission. And Laura, welcome again. We're getting a really choppy start, and I look forward to you having a smooth experience in the future, but we're really glad you're here and glad we're rolling forward. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which consists of voting on the agenda and the minutes this evening, but I regret we don't have a quorum present, and so we don't have the ability to vote for that. So we can continue with discussion, but we're unable to vote on anything for the evening. So what I'll do is I'll just pass forward on that, and we'll try to tackle that at the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is to talk about our Chapter 97 recommendations. I will try to recap where we are, and then I'd like to hear some thoughts from you all. We have a couple of discussion questions that we've kind of got prepared for this. So first, just to recap, Chapter 97, you might remember back a little ways ago, this commission made a recommendation to City Council that housing status be considered to be an addition to the Chapter 97 code. The City Council supported that recommendation and directed staff to be at work on examining what that would look like and what that would mean, kind of the legal analysis of changing it. We've looked at a couple of drafts, and there's one in your meeting packet that kind of describes the elements that would be changed or adapted in Chapter 97. And so there's really two questions before you this evening. And one of those would be, if you have any questions or changes or concerns as you look at that document. And then the second question will be to discuss how we would like to gain some input from people with lived experience, persons experiencing homelessness, or people who've recently been or have been houseless in the past, and advocates. Because back when you made the recommendation, you might remember that was one of the things that you had valued was, before it's finalized, can we get some input and some review from people with lived experience and advocates. So again, there's kind of two parts to the discussion. One is, as you review the Chapter 97 recommended changes, do you have any concerns, any questions, any comments? And then the second discussion question will be, what are your thoughts about how to integrate input from people with lived experience and advocates? And I can offer some thoughts when we get to that second question. But let me first pause, see if anyone has comments on Chapter 97. And Kathy, welcome. We see you joined us. Good to see you.
I'm sorry for being late, everyone.
So any comments on the Chapter 97 proposed changes? Or I know you've seen, we've been working at this for a few months. They might be all right at this point. I'm not sure. We'll see what you think.
So Gretchen, in what ways has the language presented today changed from what was presented last month? Or has there been a change?
Thank you. We clarified, there was a question. Forgive me. I don't think it has changed. Joaquin, forgive me. We had a couple of pieces that we added that were just mistakes in the last iteration, but I believe we had that corrected for last time. So I don't think there's any changes this time.
Yeah, that's my impression, is looking over the language. But if I remember correctly, it's undergoing a process with the city attorney. Is that process still ongoing, or has that review been completed?
They would be ready to go ahead and they've completed their initial process. Now it's with us for review. Once we've completed our review, I could signal back to the legal department, to the attorney's office, that it would be ready, and then they would bring it forward to a city council agenda item.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Any other comments, questions about the document itself?
This is Kelsey. Just want to say I think it looks really great.
Excellent. Well, good. Then I might roll us into the next phase. So options for collecting some input or some review from persons experiencing houselessness. One idea, there's an app which reaches a number of individuals, advocates, and organizational representatives that we could reach a fair number of people with. So for example, there could be sort of a summary document that helps explain what it is, and then that could be distributed on that document, and we could have a comment time where people give feedback back. Another idea is you might want to open up a future meeting of the Human Rights Commission. You could say, here's the information, and if you'd like to come and talk with us at our next meeting, that could be an idea. So I didn't know what you think might work for completing that part of the review that the commission had wanted to do of collecting some feedback. We could ask advocates and people who work with people who are currently unsheltered to have conversations, kind of work that way. Any ideas or thoughts? I don't know if anyone had an idea of how they imagined that part working.
This is Kathy. I didn't have any kind of preconceived ideas of how we might get that feedback, but hearing you talk about what the possible options are, I feel like maybe having some face-to-face conversations might be we might get better feedback than if we just send out a writing and hope for people to respond. So that would be, I guess I would lean toward doing something in person, whether that be inviting people to a meeting or going out and talking to some of the advocates in the community. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other feedback on that?
I agree with that. Sorry, this is Amelia Knight. I agree that it would be good to hear from people instead of having them fill out a form.
This is Gretchen. Thank you. And quick housekeeping note, Amelia, you remind me it's really helpful if we introduce ourselves real quick before we begin talking, just to help our interpretation team focus in on you. So thank you for modeling that and reminding me today too. So with face-to-face, there's a couple of approaches. We could invite folks to our next meeting and just kind of get the word out and see who might be interested. A second idea would be I could try to locate a gathering of people who are already meeting and see if we could come to them. And I don't know if folks have a strong opinion about that, or if we were coming to them, I think I'd be seeking a couple of volunteers from the commission who might be interested in doing that. Or if we invite people here, then you'd all be here and have the opportunity to hear the feedback. So I don't know if there's thoughts about those directions.
Hi, this is Joaquin. I have a strong preference to going where people are. I think that's probably one of the most efficient ways to guarantee accessibility and transparency and engagement. But of course, I think doing both is not mutually exclusive. But I think at least going where people are, I think is the best way forward.
This is Kathy. I agree with that. For the same reason, I think if we just put out an invitation to come join our meeting, I'm not sure how many people will feel comfortable with that, not knowing what to expect and maybe not having access to to being able to join a Zoom meeting at 5:30 on a Wednesday evening. So I agree with that. And I think it gives us a chance to get out in the community too.
Great. Any contrary or different views? Okay, very good. Then I could volunteer to go ahead and identify a couple of opportunities where we could meet people where they are, and then share those with you and see who might be interested, as well as put the word out about our meeting. Like Joaquin said, it's certainly not mutually exclusive, so we can kind of do a little bit of both. How does that sound?
As
Great.
as kind of a corollary, my offer to just getting community-based organization engagement, we could have, if individual folks don't feel comfortable coming to an HRC meeting, that we can have representatives of organizations come and speak on their behalf. Might be a more accessible way too, and it has a continuity of engagement on the part of community leaders and organizational leaders, and an opportunity for further engagement in that way. As best of both worlds option, so to speak.
Yeah, copy that. Good. Excellent. Stay tuned. I'll do a bit of investigating on what gatherings or natural places of, like if there's a meal being served at Arches or a committee meeting of like there's an emergency homelessness committee that's been reforming lately over at the Mission, for example. There's a few different gatherings that I think might work. Through our Homeless Alliance, there's a coordination committee that brings a lot of people together. So I've got a few thoughts. I'll check with the chairs of those groups and with the coordinators of those activities, pin down a couple of options, and then send out some invites. Excellent. Well, any other questions or comments related to Chapter 97? All right, well, then that concludes that agenda item. The next piece on the agenda is the discrimination survey. This topic, you might remember our June meeting. For those of you who were able to be here, we were able to receive the students and professor from Western Oregon University who presented the results of their research. We also appreciate our awareness campaign task force subcommittee who began to start to assimilate some of the themes. The purpose of tonight's conversation, I think, is you know, a bit multifaceted. We want to give you the chance to talk as a commission about what did you take away from the survey? What are points that you think that resonate with you? Are there pieces as you think about our communication back out to the community that you really want to highlight? We're interested in follow-up communication. And so just the very specific mechanics of who's interested in writing that, what are the components that we want to be sure to say? We want to reaffirm the idea that we want to get the word out to people who had taken the survey in the first place as much as possible to close that loop. That was a theme in a couple of conversations that we've had. And you know, maybe the simplest way to put it is, what did you think of the recommendations that were presented by the students? Do any of those resonate with you? Are those things that you might want to highlight or see as things that you want to work on? So I guess in summary, it's a chance to let you kind of breathe with the information a little bit and discuss what you took from it, and then move towards a plan for communicating back out to the community about the report and the results. Kathy, I might, at the risk of putting you on the spot as chair of our awareness task force, just see if there's anything you'd like to add as we kick off that conversation.
I think you stated it pretty well, Gretchen. Sorry, this is Kathy. You know, we put the survey out there and we distributed it to a lot of different community groups and electronically and Facebook, and we got some really good feedback. And I think it's important that we follow up with those individuals who took the survey and those groups who distributed it to their people. And so there should be some sort of a response. And I can picture a couple of different things. One of the recommendations from the students was to do like a one-page infographic that we could share and distribute out there with some of the feedback. And another idea is to do some sort of a write-up that we could work with the Salem Reporter on and share that as well. And I think it's important to do that in a timely fashion, but I think something in that's important is, what does the Human Rights Commission, how did we react to the survey results? What do we plan on doing with that information so we could include that as well? So yeah, Gretchen did a good job of presenting that. So I don't know if people had a chance to look at the recommendations, but at some point, that's something I would like us to look through to see what, are there actions that we think we should take as a result of the survey.
Hi, this is Joaquin. In the interest of not taking up too much airtime, I'll keep my comments limited. But for those of us who were present at the awareness meeting, the task force meeting, was it last week? Could have been last week. Who knows anymore? I raised some reservations, which I think are worth raising here, namely acknowledging and engaging with the limitations of the data collected and kind of represented in this report. Namely, I mean, coupling kind of the results with the way in which data was collected, I think there are questions of robustness with the data and specifically how much, to what degree the recommendations or the data is actionable on the part of policymakers and decision makers as then city council. And I remember during the original presentation for those who were present, I raised questions around, X population identifies as or self-reports experiencing discrimination, where, in what way, those questions and that nuance is not represented in the data and therefore makes actions difficult. Now that is, I'll be clear, that's not to say that there isn't a wealth of information that is relevant to both the commission and say city council. It's just, I think we need to have a serious engagement with that. I also agree with Kathy about the need to kind of report what is the best of this data quickly and accessibly and effectively to our community partners. But I just want to kind of highlight that as a general comment and then turn to Gretchen and ask, I noticed that there was a chief DEI officer recommendation. Is that something that the mayor or in city council are considering seriously, or to what extent is that something that's on the table, just as a point of curiosity for myself?
This is Gretchen, of course, great question. And I certainly don't know what I don't know. So there may be ideas and considerations along those lines that I'm unaware of. What I know is that in the budget process, not this year, but the previous year, through the budget committee and city council, a DEI focused position. They didn't call it a chief DEI officer, but they did have a title around that was created. And so we do have a position now, a person named Kosti in the position who's at work on the objectives that council had laid out for that person. I don't know to what extent additional positions are being considered. I would say that one of the key elements with that is just the budget environment or climate that we're in. The budget committee took a pretty hard look at the expected revenue shortfalls that are coming right around the corner. We have this fiscal year met and budgeted and planned, but then we're expecting deficits in each of our future years that continue to grow larger and larger. So adding new positions is always considered in the context of that budget climate. So that's what I know about that, but it's certainly a good question. Could be something that's evaluated, especially in light of the existing efforts that are underway here at the city. There's a committee and a position and some work underway in a number of different departments in that area. So it might be about seeing how would that idea compare to the existing efforts that are underway.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Just to follow up, Gretchen, this is Kathy. My understanding, so that one of the recommendations from the students was the Salem Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and there were a handful of other recommendations, but have those recommendations gone anywhere outside of this group? I don't think that the city is aware of that until we pass it along, are they?
Generally shared a little bit of information just because I wanted to get the word out that, hey, that survey is completed. The Human Rights Commission is talking about it, but it's like it hasn't been an action item at city council or anything. Because you're right, like if we did want to suggest that, we'd want to be able to come along with any highlights or key points that you all would want to make. But I mean, people may have been reading it. I've certainly mentioned that this is something that's under discussion at the Human Rights Commission. Yeah. The first one on the list is something we just worked on. The way they phrased it was homelessness as protected group. We were just discussing housing status as a piece to add to Chapter 97. And so that's being worked on. Another one here is anti-bias education campaign. Consider developing an education campaign to build awareness around bias discrimination. Kind of reminds me of some of the objectives of the Human Rights Commission's Awareness Campaign Task Force. Not precisely, but partially. There was a recommendation around policing that looks very similar to the objectives in the police department's strategic plan already underway, for example.
So this is Joaquin again. I'm doing my own thing I said I wouldn't do. Maybe I'll invite Kathy to speak a little bit about what we talked about last time with respect to presenting or compiling a presentation, for City Council, whether that's the students themselves or members of this commission, and of steps forward in that area. Because I think generally the comment or the attitude is we're butting up against a resource problem for a lot of these recommendations, or at least be able to act unilaterally. But I think approaching City Council is a viable option. Kathy, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the Awareness Campaign Task Force received some feedback from Linnell Wilcox, who many of you may be familiar with. She attends our meetings fairly regularly, asking us to present, or maybe ask the students and Marianne, the professor, to present at City Council if that was possible. And part of her comments were, if it's not possible this year, to build it into the process next year. And some of her thinking was, we can send an email, or Gretchen can send an email or provide it to them in a written packet, but then it's on them to take the time to be able to read it and go through. Whereas if it were a presentation at a council meeting, they could hear firsthand the experience from the students and what they went through and their thought process, as well as the results and the recommendations, and perhaps have a representative or two from the Human Rights Commission in addition to the students and the professor. And we talked I remember Gretchen, in terms of timing, was thinking that wouldn't be feasible before August. And I agree with that. We wouldn't have time to prepare for that. But at the same time, it would be helpful to have, if that were a possibility, to be able to speak to what the Human Rights Commission as a whole, what our response was, what we thought about the survey, what maybe some thoughts about next year, if we have any sort of analysis or just responses in general to the information that was in the report. And so that's where we're coming back to the full group to get that feedback from the rest of you. Did I miss anything, Joaquin?
Not that I can remember. That was great. Thank you.
So if anybody has any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear them, as far as any of this, just the survey in general, the communication, whether it's something that we'd like to ask for as far as maybe getting on a council agenda, but getting ready for that too. We want to make sure that if that were a possibility, that we're presenting information and that we know exactly what our purpose is in doing that.
This is Gretchen. Yeah, that is such a terrific point, Kathy, about being real precise about the purpose and laying it out. That will help the engagement be the most successful if it's something that we want to move forward with. And to Joaquin's earlier point, you could imagine sections of it. There might be an introduction about what the report was and some information, including a section about what we didn't collect you know, to Joaquin's point, I think one of the things that's been a challenge in the past is folks have pointed out, well, it's not a statistically valid sample, so you can't make some inferences from it that was that, you know, that you have limitations in what you can conclude from it, you know, and then speak to what it does say to us. What it can help us understand is folks' experience around what they've reported, and then could roll into some whether it's some of the things that the commission's working on, whether it's the Safe Spaces program, or getting the word out about the reporting opportunities, whether it's to report a bias or hate incident or crime, and the work we're trying to do to help people feel more comfortable with that. Or you could imagine sort of a flow along those lines, both in the communication, like the infographic, Kathy, that you mentioned as an idea that could go out as a feedback loop to folks, you know, as well as be offered to council. So you can start to see that coming together. I think it's just interesting to pause here and see if there's any pieces that really resonate with the commission that you really think is important to you, like making the process for reporting crime as easy as possible, or you know, whatever that might look like, or what else might have stood out to you from the students' data.
Equally, I think presenting to council would give us an opportunity to say what we've learned and what we plan to do next time, and to just make the whole process moving forward a lot more robust. And as a reminder, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it's only the second year of this partnership with Western Oregon. Third year. Thank you, Kathy. Third year. So I think it's a evolving process, and I think the conversation, the presentation can reflect that and make it even a richer recommendation. And well, I guess more to your point, Gretchen, about things in the kind of key findings that were relevant. I think obviously the prevalence of disability among the household population and the ways in which that contributes to lived discrimination is enormously valuable to highlight and understand, both as an entity that's counseling city council, but also policymakers that sit on city council. The breakdown of discrimination other than houselessness, I think it was race and gender, or might have been gender and race, I can't remember the order, is also very relevant. And so I think a useful way to kind of frame this is in something like a snapshot of what's going on. That might be a valuable kind of presentational tool. I don't know what people think of that, but I think there is relevant information that we can kind of present and say, here's a rough idea of what's going on and who's being affected in what ways and to what degree. I don't know what folks think about that in terms of kind of that level of analysis, but.
This is Kathy. One of the points that I found interesting was how similar the numbers were to last year's survey, not only in the number of responses, but in the results. The percentages were very, very similar in a number of areas. And I thought that was interesting. And that's one of the pieces that we would highlight in any sort of follow-up is that, you know, and Gretchen already said it's a voluntary survey. People don't have to take it. A lot of people who haven't experienced discrimination felt like they had no reason to take it because it didn't apply to them. And so there's a lot of, and that's what we could emphasize as far as the limitations. But of those who did respond, I was surprised at just how similar the results were. And maybe that speaks to, is it really need to be an annual survey? Maybe there's, I don't know, but that's something we can talk about in planning for the next one is what time frame makes sense.
This is Gretchen. Well, thank you. Any other discussion pieces? Unless there's interested volunteers here, well, let me start there. I think the next step is probably to assimilate some of these notes and thoughts, as well as working with the report to start putting together a short piece with some of these bullets that have been discussed here. And then from that, you could imagine an infographic could be created, an update to those who helped us distribute the survey could be created. You know, you could see the next step. Is anybody inclined, interested to develop a draft of that? Or, you know, should we try to do that at the staff level and then bring you back something to react to? What are folks' thoughts?
Gretchen, I can put something together rather than have you put it together or staff. I can put something together and then send it out. My question is timing. Is this something that we would come back to at our next meeting? Because I'm not sure I want to wait. I don't want to wait too long to get something back out there again.
Yeah, it's a great question. Pausing to think about for the moment, what we would not, I don't want to speak at the double negative, what we can do is speak to things that the Human Rights Commission has already affirmed and that is already in policy, you know, like some of the themes that have come up tonight, as well as, of course, the fact that the survey was completed. What we could not do without circling back at a future meeting is commit to any new initiatives, any policy directions or areas of focus for the commission in the coming year.
Right. Okay.
So it might be a two-parter. It might be like you get that initial piece out, which is within our existing framework, but then maybe it includes the commission's continuing to look at the information to consider, you know, what else to tackle this year. That, I mean, that's easy enough to be able to say.
Yeah, this is Kathy again. I don't remember if it was in the report or if it was in the presentation, but I remember that being something that Marianne had mentioned is maybe doing some sort of a feedback loop. Like you have the initial feedback and then maybe there's some sort of quarterly follow-up or some sort of continuous loop. And so I can see that where we have an initial, here are we did the survey, we got results, here is some information, but then not committing to anything. But maybe in a few months we come back and say, okay, now that we've had time to let that information digest and we've talked about it, here are some things that we are considering moving forward with. But of course, we wouldn't do that without the full commission being behind it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Yeah. So with that, I can put something together over the next several days and send it to you for getting it to a few others for feedback, and we can go from there.
Kathy, that sounds good. And just a quick note, I'm going to be out of the office between July 19th and July 29th, which is challenging timing, but I can certainly, if I can receive something before I can go, I can certainly get it out to the rest of all of you to comment on, and then we can finalize it right when I get back, if that works.
Actually, that would be a good timing. That would give folks, 10 days to be able to review and provide feedback, and then we can be ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah,
that works.
Great. And we have the Awareness Task Force meeting that first week of August, so we can finalize things. Great.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Kathy. And everyone, thank you for the discussion. Okay, well, let's see, the next piece on the agenda is town hall planning.
Gretchen?
This is, yeah, Kathy, go ahead.
I am so sorry. If you'd rather I wait until the end, that's fine. But I had one note, and I apologize for being late to the meeting, about the Chapter 97 recommendations. I had a quick process question.
Of course, go right ahead.
Okay. So with the definition of sexual orientation, I think I mentioned this in my written comments last time. It's not being amended because what we currently have is consistent with state law, although there are limitations with the state law definition. My question is, for purposes of presenting the recommendation to City Council, is that something that either the task force or the HRC or just me personally could provide that comment that we considered this, it's not part of the report, but for me personally, it's important to pass along that information, that it's something we talked about doing, but we realize there are limitations. I'm just wondering about how that would work.
This is Gretchen. Yes, thank you. It's really, both are possibilities.
Okay.
I could convey it back to the legal department as they prepare the document for city council, and that could be potentially included. And then additionally, individuals and or the Human Rights Commission as a whole could plan to make comment at the same meeting where this comes back to be able to time that and coordinate it.
Okay.
And yeah, we did talk about it a little bit at the last meeting. I remember sharing I was reading from your notes a little bit, and it led to some thoughts about how to explore changes at the state level.
Right.
About that. We began to think about that.
Well, maybe when it comes back, after we get that feedback and there's a final recommendation to put forward, maybe we can talk about at that time what that would look like.
Great.
If others wanted to join. Okay, thank you. I apologize for going backwards.
No, it's great. We're glad to have you.
Hey, this is Shakirika, and I have to apologize for being late as well. On this topic of definition of sexual orientation, I'm curious, I'd like to discuss with the legal department, how is this different than when we made the proposal to have unsheltered as a protected class, because that doesn't align with state law. So is there some other way that we could get a better definition in with the same process?
Tricarical, welcome, and thank you for asking. I will do my best to try to help respond, and I think it's because the difference is in the case of the state, you're right, it's just not in there. So there's not a definition of housing status or a person experiencing being unsheltered that could be different from the definition we put in and create potential confusions or challenges for people who are trying to seek remedies. So there's just nothing there to conflict with. So we know it's all city. In the case of the state, they predicted complications if a person was trying to seek a remedy, if they'd experienced discrimination based on their sexual orientation, for example, in the workplace, and BOLI has one definition, the Bureau of Labor and Industries has one definition, the city has a different one. They thought there could be complications that could potentially gum up people's attempt to get remedy. And so I think it's just the absence of one makes it easier.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Great. Any other conversation about the Chapter 97 or the discrimination parts? Or I mean, survey, study. I'm losing my words. Okay, very good. Then town hall. A few months ago, when the commission was undertaking some planning for the year, there was some conversation about being interested in hosting, planning, developing some sort of way to gather with more people around a human rights topic. I understand we wanted to bring that agenda item back before we got too far into the year. And what I remember from the discussion is that we did leave it really broad. It's possible that there may be topics on your minds that are emerging either out of the survey or the study or the hate and bias reports you've been hearing about the past few months that you think would be good to explore. Maybe not yet, but so this item is back on the agenda just to check in and see if there is some sort of gathering town hall community discussion the commission would like to have. In past years, there have been a couple of times where we've brought forward a topic and for example, you can do it in a few ways. You can identify some speakers to provide some basic information. You could have open questions that you engage with the audience, and it's basically a tool to help have discussion and connect with people around human rights. There might be topics you want to clarify. So I'll just throw it out and see if there's anything like that emerging for any of you, or if there's interest in beginning to plan or develop something.
This is Joaquin. I'm assuming the silence means that it's a resounding endorsement of the idea that community engagement is essential to the function of this city, and we should be a part of that. So yes, let's do it. Your town hall.
Yeah.
This is Kathy. Is this something that the Human Rights Commission has done before?
It is. It's been a long time. I'm trying to think of the years, certainly pre-COVID. But yes, I can think of a couple of different iterations of gatherings that were done. And so one of the things I can do, if this would be helpful, is grab some of the materials from a past one and share that out as an example or as a template. And then we could have the agenda item on the next month, and you'd have a chance to sort of think about an example of what we did in the past. I see a thumbs up from Tricarico, so I could certainly do that.
And Gretchen, were you around back then when it's been done before? I'm just curious how it went. If
Yes,
it was okay.
I was. And I think I'm the only one here tonight that would have been, unless I'm mistaken.
I like to apologize. The interpreter needs to apologize. Krista was speaking, but I was muted. So she had a comment. So this is Krista. I've missed the last past few meetings, and I was just wondering if this has just come up in the last past meetings, or have we focused on other things? And maybe if you could tell me what we have decided that we would do, it would help me know if we should go forward with the town hall.
This is Gretchen. Thank you, Krista. No, in the past couple of meetings, this topic has not been on the agenda. It was on,
Okay.
It was born, you might remember, I remember you were speaking about the idea back in like January, February. And at the time, folks had thought, let's work a bit on what we have on our plate and then start to bring the idea of a town hall up again in summer. So that's why we're revisiting it. We may not have capacity, though. I can see we're still working on the Safe Spaces program. We're working on the Discrimination Survey results. So, it may be too early, but just remembered that commitment to bring it back up in summer.
And this is Krista again. So I know that houselessness is a big issue that we talked about, and it is important. And so, are there any other ideas about that part of it?
This is Kathy. Krista, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking about, but I can let you know that the Awareness Campaign Task Force has had on its kind of to-do list for quite some time now, some sort of a follow-up, communication with the community at large, as well as the houseless population. There's two different kind of aspects we've been talking about. One is some sort of an education campaign with the community at large about houselessness and our unsheltered neighbors, with the goal of trying to help people see the humanity and not so much all the negativity that's out there. And then also having some sort of communication, I don't know what it would look like with our unsheltered neighbors themselves, to let them know that, we hear them, we see them, and to have some sort of a communication around that. But we haven't talked about what that would look like. We were waiting in part for the Chapter 97 recommendations to get a little bit further, so that's something we could take back and show people that's done and let them know. So I just wanted to bring that up, that's something we've been talking about as the task force.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Joaquin again. Gretchen, could you speak to how well attended these events have been in the past?
This is Gretchen. You'd think I could, but at the moment, having been people who were there, but it's been a while and my mind is fuzzy on it. So I think before I throw out some numbers, I should go back and refresh my memory.
I think I ask really only to kind of get an idea of what kind of like all I can think of is in Spanish right now, not English. I'm sorry. This is the curse of having English as a second language. The kind of not proselytizing, kind of the advertising of the event. I'm sorry. Let me start again. I think that the question is around how effective kind of advertising has been in the past. So that's why I asked. But as a general comment, I'll say too that town halls serve a dual purpose. One is obviously for the commission to kind of speak to the work being done on behalf of the people of Salem, but it's also a time and opportunity for the commission to hear from residents about what their priorities are and their experiences with human rights issues, discrimination, you name it. So I think even if we don't have a litany of things maybe to report on all, I think we do have substantive things. Just doing it for the sake of doing it and engaging people, I think is as relevant as any other reason.
This is Gretchen. When I send out stuff from the past, I could also include the list that was done at the beginning of the year. You might remember the group had compiled kind of a list of accomplishments and what's upcoming. That might be a bit of a springboard from which to consider some threads. And like to Kathy's point, there might be a couple of pieces off of the work that, is already in the queue, like what Kathy said, or that Safe Spaces project, for example, maybe a town hall around accessible and welcoming spaces, and what does that mean and look like, and how do we do this well, and what are some challenges people have experienced coming into space? Like that could be another thread for as an example, which builds on the work that the LGBTQIA+ intersectional task force is doing. So yeah, that's a good thread. I can include the documents of that look back to last year and look ahead to this year, coupled with a template or example of what we did in the past. And I'll try to see if I've got notes on how many people came. Any other thoughts or comments about a town hall idea? Okay, that takes us to item D, which is the bias crime update.
Hi, this is Debbie. We had 3 bias crimes since the last time we met and 1 bias incident. The first bias crime actually was a late report to me. So it happened on June 1st, which was actually before our last meeting. This one happened in Northeast Salem at a business where a customer was walking out of the store when the suspect, who was outside, threw an object at the victim and made some racial slurs towards the victim. The police were called. The suspect actually was not that far away. We were able to contact the suspect and we made an arrest in that case. And it was the charge of harassment. There were no injuries due to the striking of the victim with the object. Then June 18th, we actually had a series of 3 reports of different locations in the same general area in Southeast Salem where 3 different residences that had some type of either pride flag or pride insignia at their home was targeted. Either a car was damaged or the house had some type of property damage, and all three of the homes believe that the target of their property was because of them displaying the pride flag. There's no suspect in that case right now. So those 3 cases are all open. And then the third one, what happened on June 26th, and it happened in Southeast Salem. And this case was actually one that I've reported on before, where the victim has been having quite a few issues with neighbors. The neighbors have been engaging in just harassing behavior. And so on the 26th, that harassing behavior actually escalated to the point where, and that harassing behavior had to do with the suspects were using anti-LGBTQ language and slurs towards the victim. On the 26th, that harassing behavior actually turned to an assault. And the victim was fairly severely assaulted by 2 different suspects. Both the suspects were known to the victim. They fled the scene. However, we have been able to arrest one of the suspects. And the second suspect has a warrant issued for their arrest, and we're still looking for that individual. That individual, actually, or the victim, has been working with the state of Oregon bias crime and bias incident hotline as well, regarding those ongoing issues. And then the bias incident occurred on June 16th, and it was involving some graffiti in a park in Northeast Salem that was on a park bench that had some racist slurs were marked onto the bench and some of the park equipment. And there are, at this time, no suspects on that case. And those are what I have.
Lieutenant, thank you. Are there any questions for Lieutenant Aguilar? Very good.
Lieutenant,
Oh, yeah.
do you know if in the third case how the victim is doing? You said they were severely assaulted. Are they doing better?
Yeah, he ended up having surgery, but is recovering. And that case just went to grand jury. So because it's a felony assault, it has to go to grand jury first.
Sure. And
they were able to testify in grand jury on the case. So yes, they are doing as well as can be expected.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Aguilar?
This is Chicago. Do we normally see an increase in anti-LGBTQIA plus crimes during the month of Pride? Or is that just my perspective right now?
Well, great question. I would have to look back at my historical records to see if there's an increase specific to that. So I'll have to get back to you.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions for Lieutenant Aguilar? All right, the next item on the agenda are the complaints and concerns of discrimination that might come directly into the Human Rights Commission or the mayor and city manager's office. And I didn't receive any during the reporting period. I don't know if any of you had anything come to you. All right, next thing on the agenda is the task force and project updates, and that begins with the awareness group, and that's Kathy.
Hello. So I think our primary topic of discussion this at our last meeting was the discrimination survey. We talked about many of the things that we brought to this group tonight. And as we said, there are some things that I think we would do differently next time. And so I would like to get those things documented for whatever group, and the class, the students that do this, they're only doing it for a class term. And so I think there's some good feedback we can pass along for the next group of students who might be doing a survey with us. As far as we've been trying to do some sort of a monthly communication. I think we have been very good at doing that the last few months. But we did talk about that the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act is July 26th. It's been in place for 32 years. And so putting out some sort of a communication. And Gretchen, forgive me, my notes from our meeting last week are not great. Did we talk about, do you need something from us, or was there something you were going to do in relation to that?
I am not needing or waiting on anything from anybody. We did invite folks if they had particular things to include to get that to me by last Friday, but no, I'm planning a piece that I'll put out to our distribution list.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the items on our agenda was a position description for the Human Rights Commission. And we didn't really have time to talk about it in too much detail because I think most of our time right now is focused on the survey. But one of the things that we've been talking about putting together is having a position description for people who might be interested in applying to be on the commission, so that they really know kind of what the role is and know what to expect. So that's something that I think we'll be working on. And I do want to mention, I think it might have been in one of the city's newsletters that I saw by email, but I did see a blurb about recruiting a youth member. So I was happy to see that. I don't know if we've gotten any interest since that, but I did notice that. So and that's all I can think of from our meeting this past week.
Excellent, Kathy, thank you. And Spencer, if I'm not mistaken, I think you shared that you were a person in high school, and so I think would fit that definition of a youth member. And so we're really glad that you're here and coming along in the meeting today. Very good. The next item on the agenda is the Equity Asks report. And I realize I try to comb the work that we're doing at the city aligned with the report and see when I can find actions that are being taken. And I realized I missed that in my preparation this evening. So I'm trying to sit and recall some things, but essentially I don't think I have a report today. I'd be happy to, if there's questions folks have for us, I'd be happy to respond to those. I know in the world, we've talked about homelessness a bit this evening. I know in that world, we just received over $8 million in grant money on Monday night. We have investments that are coming in to help us open the navigation center, and we received $2.5 million in extra money related to sheltering that the council will be able to use around alternative shelter options. And I know that was on the list, and that's something I worked on earlier in the week. But I don't know if there's questions about any of the items that I can help with. All right. Next thing on the agenda is the LGBTQ task force update. It looks like Kelsey had to drop off. I don't know, Tricarico, if you'd be up for providing some updates.
Well, I wasn't at that meeting. Otherwise, I normally would, Gretchen.
Oh, that's right. Forgive me.
This is Kathy.
No worries, thank you.
I think it was just the two of us. That would be Kelsey and myself and Gretchen. We reviewed the Safe Spaces program documentation, kind of just what we've got so far, and gave some
I'm
feedback.
sorry, would you start
Oh,
again? You reviewed what? This is the interpreter. I just missed what you reviewed.
I apologize. So
It's okay.
we reviewed the Safe Spaces program documentation. We went over what the documentation that's pulled together so far, kind of what it looks like, and gave a little bit of feedback to Gretchen. But I don't recall talking in too much detail about it because there was not a quorum present. But we discussed a little bit about the workflow of what that would look like if a business or organization wanted to apply the program, kind of what the next steps are. And I think that's all I can remember at this point, but I think that was the main focus of the meeting.
This is Gretchen. Kathy, thank you. I'll just add one piece that Kelsey had been talking with an organization out of New York called the Out Foundation, which has in some ways a similar approach to what we've been talking about, where in this case, gyms or fitness centers can work with the foundation to help ensure they're demonstrating accessibility to people. And so there's a bit of a checklist and a review. And so Kelsey spoke with them to try to learn lessons that could apply to our process. Any other questions or updates from this task force? All right. Well, I'm going to jump over staff updates and calendar. I don't have anything to particularly share on that. And you've all listened to me way too much tonight. You're missing Angelo, I'm sure. I don't know if there's any member remarks and announcement. And for Laura and those of you who are newer, this is an open time where if there's emerging issues on the minds of the commissioners, this is a chance to make remarks or comments. Sometimes that's something in the news or something you're hearing as you interact with folks, but we try to leave that open time to be able to be just responsive and current for you. So I don't know if any of our members have remarks to share.
This is David. I have a remark or a comment.
Yeah.
Did we have a quorum tonight?
You know, there was a moment where we did. It weaved in and out. We had one for a moment while everyone was here, but then we had someone drop off. I didn't circle back to the minutes because I know our newest member didn't have the opportunity to be at those previous meetings. And so I thought we shouldn't progress with like minutes approval or anything.
Because the reason why I bring it up is if we didn't have a quorum tonight, this would have been our third month in a row of not meeting quorum. So maybe leadership can look at a way to figure out how we could boost attendance.
David, thank you. I agree. I'm tracking that too, because I think we already had minutes in the queue. So that would make number 3. Krista, as vice chair, I'm glad you're here to hear that idea from David. Maybe you and I and Angelo can connect about that.
This is Kathy. I second David's comment. I also had a question, Gretchen, if I might. I think it was earlier in the year, but some months ago, we reviewed a list of possible trainings for the commission, and I'm just wondering where that ended up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm afraid that's just been slower on my to-do list to accomplish. I reached out a couple of times and made some explorations, but I haven't been able to bring anything to a wrap. So yeah, I think it's just been the lack of time on my part to be able to accomplish the objective of, getting someone identified and that meets what we're looking for and then scheduled into the piece.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other remarks from members? All right, hearing none, then I think we're at a wrap for this evening. I imagine as I support Krista and Angelo in thinking about quorum, if there's things that come to your mind that you think might assist with that, please don't hesitate to let us know. I'm sure ideas will be welcome. Very good. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you for coming
Thank you,
tonight.
Gretchen. Thank you, Gretchen, for facilitating.